There it was, a single photo, casually dropped into my evening scroll that stopped my world from turning. It was him, of course, Mark, and her, the coworker he swore was just a friend. They were smiling, wrapped in each other's arms on our old couch, in our old apartment. The life I had meticulously designed, now occupied by a usurper. But it wasn't their smug faces that made the air leave my lungs. It was the small, cylindrical device sitting on the side table next to them. The Alexa, my Alexa. Seeing it there, a silent witness to their triumph, wasn't just painful. It was a lit match dropped into a pool of gasoline. The quiet hurt I had nursed for months was instantly burned away. In its place, a cold, sharp clarity began to form. He didn't just break my heart, he fundamentally disrespected my intelligence. My name is Isabella, and for 3 years, I believed I was building a seamless life with a man who loved me. As it turns out, I was just designing a beta version that he would pass on to someone else. I'm a user experience designer. My entire career is built on logic, empathy, and a deep understanding of how systems work. I create clean, intuitive pathways for people to navigate complex digital worlds. I bring order to chaos. For a long time, I tried to apply that same patience and methodology to my relationship with Mark. I genuinely believed that any problem could be solved with clear communication and a willingness to find an elegant solution. That belief was my greatest vulnerability. Mark operated on a different system entirely. His was built on shortcuts, plausible deniability, and the path of least resistance for himself. The breakup was a messy, chaotic affair that went against every principle I held dear. The final days were a blur of cardboard boxes and hollowed-out rooms that echoed with his excuses. He had cheated, that much was clear, but he twisted the narrative until I was dizzy. He claimed we were on a break. He said it was a misunderstanding. He masterfully framed himself as the victim of circumstance, a man lost in a fog of emotional confusion. I stood there in the middle of our half-empty living room, surrounded by the debris of our shared life. I was emotionally exhausted, worn down to a raw nerve by the constant battle. I just wanted it to be over. That was when he pointed to the Alexa on the kitchen counter. "I'm keeping this," he said, his tone casual, as if he were claiming a lamp. "I paid for it, after all." A lie, a small, insignificant lie in the grand scheme of his betrayal, but a lie nonetheless. I had the email receipt from my Amazon Prime account to prove it. I had the credit card statement. I opened my mouth to argue, to present the evidence. But then I looked at his face, the arrogant set of his jaw, and I saw the endless, circular argument that would follow. I saw hours of him gaslighting me, making me feel crazy for caring about something so small. My desire for peace, for a clean and final cut, overrode my need to be right. My conflict avoidance was a flaw he had always known how to exploit. "Fine," I said, the word tasting like ash. "Keep it." I let him win that battle because I no longer had the strength for the war. I just wanted him out of my life, out of the beautiful system I had tried to build. For months, that little injustice would sting. In quiet moments, I would remember his smug look of victory as he packed the speaker. It was a symbol of everything he had taken, a monument to the way he had played me for a fool. I tried to move on. I poured myself into my work, designing flawless interfaces and user-friendly systems. I was good at it. I found a new apartment, a quiet space that was entirely my own, free of his influence. I told myself I was healing. I told myself that what he did and who he was with no longer mattered. I almost believed it. But seeing that photo tonight changed everything. It wasn't just about him being happy. It was the blatant display of it all. The casual cruelty of him flaunting his new life, built directly on the foundations of the one he destroyed with me. He and his new girlfriend, sitting on the couch I picked out, in the apartment I found, with the smart speaker I paid for. It was a complete system overwrite, and he was the smug administrator who had stolen the password. My friends had always said I was too trusting, too willing to let things slide for the sake of harmony. They were right. I had let him walk away with a piece of our life, simply because the emotional cost of fighting felt too high at the time. But seeing it there, in his new life, I realized the cost was still being paid. My peace had been purchased with my own self-respect. The patient, meticulous designer inside me looked at the situation not as a heartbreak, but as a flawed system. A system with a major security vulnerability. Mark's arrogance was his greatest weakness. He saw technology as a simple tool to be used, a trophy to be displayed. He never bothered to understand the architecture running beneath the surface. He assumed that physical possession of the device meant total control. That was his fatal error. He only saw the speaker, the simple user interface. He forgot who designed the system. He forgot who held the administrative keys. And he forgot that every account, every device is connected to a back end that I still controlled. The hurt was finally gone, replaced by a cold, quiet purpose. It was time for a system update. It was time for a system update. And unlike the ones I designed for work, this one wouldn't be optional. There was no explosion of anger. No cathartic smashing of plates or tearful phone calls to my friends. Instead, a profound and unusual calm washed over me, settling deep in my bones. The frantic energy of betrayal had been replaced by the quiet focus of a professional with a new project. Later that night, unable to sleep, I decided to do some digital spring cleaning. It's a habit of mine, a way of imposing order on the chaos of the internet. I unsubscribed from old newsletters and deleted accounts for services I no longer used. It felt good, like weeding a garden. That's when I saw it. An automated email from Amazon, a routine summary of my account activity. I almost deleted it without reading, but a single line caught my eye. Your registered devices. I clicked, and a list loaded on the screen. My Kindle, my phone. And there, at the bottom of the list, were 3 words that made my heart beat a little faster. Mark's Echo Dot. He had never even bothered to change the default name I had set up for him when we moved in together. His laziness, once an annoyance, was now a beautiful, exploitable flaw. My finger hovered over the deregister device button on the screen. I could do it right now. With a single click, the Alexa in his apartment would become a useless plastic cylinder. He would be cut off, the digital umbilical cord severed forever. But as I imagined his momentary confusion and frustration, it felt hollow. It was too simple, too merciful. It was an ending, not a lesson. A small, slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about design. It was about creating a user experience he would never forget. I closed my laptop, the decision made. I walked to my new, clean kitchen and brewed a cup of chamomile tea. As I held the warm mug in my hands, I felt a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. I would not be a helpless victim in his sloppy, self-serving narrative. I would become its architect. The next morning, I approached the problem like any other professional project. I sat at my desk with a fresh notebook and a pen, the morning light streaming through my window. This wasn't about revenge. It was about resolving a critical user issue. The users, I wrote, were Mark and his new girlfriend. The system was the Alexa, still linked to my account. The primary pain point was their unearned, smug bliss, built on a foundation of lies and my own property. And the goal was to design an experience that would introduce a fatal error into their relationship. I would use the system itself to exploit Mark's key vulnerability, his potent combination of arrogance and technological ignorance. I picked up my phone and opened the Alexa app. My fingers moved with practiced ease through the menus. A direct attack would be clumsy, the work of an amateur. Making the device play loud music at 3 a.m. or setting a dozen bizarre alarms was tempting, but it was too obvious. It would point directly back to me, and Mark would simply unplug it. The solution had to be elegant. It had to be subtle. Most importantly, it had to feel like it was self-inflicted. He had to become the agent of his own undoing. I navigated to the device settings, scrolling through the options. I saw the network information, the volume controls, the language settings. Then my eyes landed on a simple, overlooked field. Device name. My breath caught in my throat. The beauty of the system was that the wake word, the word Alexa that activates the device, could not be easily changed. It was hard-coded. But the device name, that was just a label, a simple string of text that the system recites when confirming a connection to another device. A string of text I could change to anything I wanted. My mind raced. Mark was lazy. He would never dig this deep into the settings. He would say the wake word and the system would respond. That was the core interaction loop. I carefully tapped the field and the keyboard appeared. I didn't type a name. I typed a command. I typed a question. I designed a query that would be triggered by his own voice. I typed, "Alexa, ask why you cheated on her." It was perfect. It wasn't an attack. It was a response. When he spoke the wake word, the system would dutifully respond with its new name, turning his simple request into a devastating question aimed directly at him, in front of her. The system itself would become my messenger. I hit save and watched the confirmation message flash on my screen. I closed the app and set my phone down on the desk. The work was done. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait for the user to fall into it. The waiting, I discovered, was the easiest part. For a week, I heard nothing. I simply went about my life with a quiet, humming sense of anticipation. I went to work, designed clean interfaces, had dinner with friends, and slept soundly in my own bed. The trap was set, a silent piece of code waiting patiently in an apartment across town. In my downtime, I would run the user flow simulation in my head. I pictured the scene with the clarity of a finished project. Her, perhaps on a quiet evening, wanting to set a mood. She would say, "Alexa, play some romantic music." Then the calm, synthetic voice would reply, not with music but with a query of its own. "Sorry, I am having trouble. Did you mean, Alexa, ask why you cheated on her?" I imagined her confusion, a slight frown creasing her forehead. She would try again, maybe speaking slower, clearer. "Alexa, what is the weather tomorrow?" And again, the same calm, devastating response, turning her simple question back on the man sitting next to her. I saw Mark, his charming facade crumbling into baffled frustration. He would fumble with the device, unplugging it and plugging it back in, the universal solution for the technologically inept. But it wouldn't work. The flaw wasn't in the hardware, it was in the system's very identity. His tech bro confidence would evaporate, leaving only a cornered man who couldn't perform a simple reset. The beauty of the design was its insidious nature. The more they interacted with it, the more it would indict him, each failed command a fresh accusation hanging in the air between them. Then on Tuesday night it happened. I was on my couch, reading a book when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen, a text from a number I hadn't deleted but had long since silenced. It was Mark. The message contained only 2 words, "Very funny." The words were dripping with impotent rage. There was no question mark, no exclamation point. It was a flat, bitter statement from a man who had just been publicly and privately humiliated by a piece of plastic he thought he owned. The trap had been sprung. I looked at his text, the glowing white letters on the black screen. "Very funny." I let my phone go dark and placed it face down. I let him stew in that digital silence for a full 10 minutes, savoring the silent, escalating panic I knew he must be feeling. He had been exposed, not by a dramatic, tearful confrontation, which he could have easily twisted, but by a quiet, inescapable line of code. His usual tools, his charm, his gaslighting, his plausible deniability, were useless against a machine. His power was gone. He couldn't call and yell at me without his new girlfriend hearing, which would only prove the machine's point. He couldn't fix the problem because he was too lazy and arrogant to ever understand how it worked. He was trapped in a feedback loop of his own making. After exactly 10 minutes had passed, I picked up my phone. My fingers were steady as I typed my reply. I didn't write an angry paragraph. I didn't list his crimes or demand an apology. I used the same principle I had used on the device, an elegant, simple query designed for maximum impact. I typed, "Guess she found out then." I hit send. The message delivered instantly. I watched the screen, waiting for the three little dots that would signify he was typing a reply. They never appeared. The lack of a response was my answer. It was louder and more satisfying than any angry confession he could have ever offered. I could almost hear the thick, accusatory silence in their apartment. I could feel the weight of his lies, finally made solid, pressing down on him. He was utterly, digitally checkmated. There was no move left for him to make. He had been beaten, not by emotion, but by a superior design. He had been beaten, not by emotion, but by a superior design. And with that superior design, the old, broken system was officially obsolete. 6 months later, my life is unrecognizable in the best way possible. The quiet confidence I discovered that night became the foundation for a complete personal and professional rebuild. I channeled that focused energy into my work, and it paid off. I got the promotion to lead designer. My new apartment is a sanctuary. It's smaller than the one Mark and I shared, but it feels infinitely larger. It's filled with light, clean lines, and a profound sense of peace. Every object, every piece of furniture was chosen by me, for me. There are no ghosts here, no digital or emotional baggage left over from a failed project. It is entirely mine. I heard about Mark through a mutual friend, Sarah, over coffee a few weeks ago. She was hesitant to bring it up, but I told her it was fine. I wasn't interested in gossip, but I was interested in the final system diagnostics. His new relationship, she said, had imploded spectacularly. Apparently, his girlfriend couldn't handle his constant, vague paranoia about technology. She couldn't understand why he would fly into a rage if she tried to use the smart speaker, or why he refused to get it fixed, instead letting it sit there, unplugged, like a monument to some private failure. Eventually, she left him. Without her income to help with the rent, Mark couldn't afford our old apartment on his own. He had to move out, breaking the lease and losing his security deposit. The life he had stolen, the victory he had flaunted, had been built on a foundation so unstable that a single line of code brought the whole thing down. Out of a clinical curiosity, I looked at his social media once. It was a sad landscape of bitter, vague posts. There were passive-aggressive quotes about loyalty and cryptic complaints about crazy exes. He was still trying to be the victim, still trying to control the narrative. But his real failure wasn't written in his self-pitying status updates. It was written in the digital ether, in a system he was too arrogant to understand and too lazy to control. He lost because he never even knew what game he was playing. Last night I went on a date. His name is David, and he's an engineer. He's kind and funny, and he listens when I talk. I found myself explaining the principles of user-centric design, how I build systems to be intuitive and helpful. Instead of his eyes glazing over, he leaned in, genuinely engaged. He started asking smart questions about back-end architecture and API calls. He told me he found my knowledge of how things work behind the scenes fascinating. To be seen and valued for my mind, for the very meticulousness Mark had exploited, felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater for years. When he dropped me off at my door, I felt a simple, uncomplicated happiness. I walked into my quiet, peaceful apartment, my sanctuary. A small smile touched my lips as I set my keys down on the table next to my own new, personally registered smart speaker. I looked at the sleek gray device, a symbol of a system working in perfect harmony with its user. I took a deep breath, and in the calm silence of my home, I gave one final, simple command. Alexa, play Karma. The music started instantly, filling the room with a crisp, clear sound. The system was working exactly as designed.